Welcome, everyone, to the True Stories in Tech podcast, life-changing conversations in the areas of technology, business, and belonging. My name is Eddie Bader. Our company is Aegis Innovators, and we are a security firm serving nonprofits, professional services, and we're going to start this over again because I don't like that. So, yeah. Oh, and like, what am I talking about? Hi, and welcome to the True Stories in Tech podcast, life-changing conversations in the areas of technology, business, and belonging. My name is Eddie Bader, and our company is Aegis Innovators, and we are a Microsoft security firm. Today, I'm here with the usual suspects, Manish Bardia, President of Think AI Consulting, Eric Klaus, CEO of Partner Source Solutions, and Brian Enuma, President of Strategic Systems Group. And our special guest today is Ryan Risley, all the way from DC, Washington, D.C., and he's Principal and Chief Technology Officer of the Business Solutions Group at Wipfli. So, Ryan, welcome. Glad to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
So we usually start off with a little get to know you, how did you get where you are now? Some interesting stories about how you found technology or your path to technology, and just a little bit insight of who you are.
Sure, that is a wide open question, but I like it. Let me try to think of something. So most people know that I'm a geek with a big heart. And so I think the combination of those two is where I am now. Essentially, I work heavily in the nonprofit community, helping organizations be the most fiduciary with donor dollars to make the most impact in the world. So if you rewind that to 1980, I'm kidding. No, I'm just going to go back to my Cub Scout days. But I was born basically under a watchful eye of a dad who thought that it was important to be a cheerful servant. And so he kind of instilled me in the role of going into Cub Scouts, basically, and getting deeper involved in being all the things that are gentlemen in this world, as well as being contributing to society. And so early on, I started doing a lot of like service projects and things like that. And I did find that it was pretty rewarding, even as a youth. And then in about fifth grade, I started programming computers on a Tandy 2000, basically building dichotomous branched science tests for the grade above me. And I thought it was cool, and I thought everybody was doing it. Evidently, they weren't. I was pulled out of my regular classes to do this program, which I later determined what it was. But I just thought it was fun. And so take that, born into Cub Scouts and then Boy Scouts and then Eagle Scout later, to programming computers in fourth grade, combine them together, and that's pretty much what I'm doing now. So I still deliver systems at the hands of all our talents to do good in the world. So there's a tie back. It's pretty consistent over the last 75 years that I've been around. I'm kidding. I've been awake for 75 years, but I'm only less than that. But no, it's been a journey, from that. And I got to applaud my parents for helping me steward the path while I was distracted, to be honest. I don't know if many folks know what it's like to try to finish an Eagle Scout project. In their teens, but my father was definitely an influence to get me that far. So fast forward then, even further, just trying to really leverage the capacity of technology to help the greater good, help more than just one, but help the many. How all the boats can lift in the tide. And that was just a consistent theme throughout both my childhood, adulthood. Most people don't know that I'm an environmental chemist by training. It's just random. Figured if we can figure out how to reduce issues with our toxicology and how humans are affecting the planet, that helps everyone. But I wound up moving into technology for nonprofits over time. So that's a fast forward. I know it was pretty quick, but there's a lot there, a lot more there. But I think those are some good nuggets to tie from my childhood.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. I love the fact that you talk about being a cheerful servant, and that's what your dad fostered or your parents fostered, right? And I know you do, Wipfli in particular does a ton of work with nonprofits, and you're heavily engaged in that space. Can you talk about how um, being in DC and working with nonprofits and Wipfli kind of all merged together, and how, talk about I know you're involved in Team Rubicon. I'd like to kind of highlight some of the things that you do, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, sure. So, most people, and I'm going to dive right into my relationship with my wife, because that's 90% of what people know about me, is I'm a cheerful husband in addition, because it's part of kind of just our day to day. We try to spread love and joy in a world that really needs hope more than anything. And with my work and everything I did back with my Eagle Scout projects and things like that over time, I was obviously philanthropic in my fraternity and all those things. But it's really about finding noble purpose. What is it that you have as a superpower that can help, lift others? They say a candle doesn't lose its brightness by lighting many more. There's all sorts of adages about that. And the goal was really, how do you find a noble purpose that you're curious about, that you have value in the world, that you're good at, and that the world needs, comes together in a way that, and I just talked about this earlier today, actually, is that people that have noble purpose don't get burnt out. You might get tired, but you don't burn out, because you have this just continual North Star or Mars shot that you're going for. And it's motivating to a lot of folks that you have something bigger than the next sale, the next lead, the next implementation, the next deal, whatever it might be. If you're trying to sustain and build or give back or solve something that's bigger than any of us can do alone. And so, being in DC, obviously, there's a lot of organizations that are headed up here, both headquarters as well as affiliates in the nonprofit space. They choose that for a variety of reasons. It is kind of the head of association, but Chicago's big, Denver's big. There's other areas that have a lot of nonprofit focus. But over the years, that's continued to grow. And, I think the benefit of being here in DC, although being here all the time isn't great. There's some times in most recent history I was not happy to be here. But the key is making sure that you've got the access to have crucial conversations with people in person. I am a big believer in using technology whenever possible. And video, most people kind of blamed me. I was always the only person on video with a lot of calls before the pandemic. They're like, oh, there's Risley again. We're going to have to stare at him the whole time, huh? Until they learned how you can disable incoming video. But it was critical to know that, communications, thousands of interactions, every day. And I know we're not on video for the podcast, but it's critical that people have that human connection. And I know we talk about know, like, trust and stuff, but it's hard to get to know someone and trust them if you've never met them in person. Even worse, never met them on video. And so being in DC, definitely critical for crucial conversations for that type of team. It's a networking town. I mean, you got to be honest. Before the pandemic, people always just ask what you did, right? I'm hopeful they stop asking that, and they ask how are you instead. I don't think that's going to happen, but it'd be great. And then enter Wipfli. So Wipfli is we're about 3,000 employees globally. We got about 50 or so locations. Most people don't know that because I don't actually talk about that much. We don't usually say that. We just like to be kind of woven into the fabric of support for partners and communities, as well as nonprofits, as well as all the industries we serve. But we've been around for 91 years, which is absolutely nuts. And so I've been there for 90% of that time, being 75 and all. Just kidding. I've been there 25% of that time, though. We merged in from another partner that came in along about 6 years ago that we were involved in. So we joined forces with Wipfli back then, and we became the DC office, basically. So the combination of those, though, is, the ability to make change in a community that is local, although we are global, the rails and by which to make change from a technology perspective in an organization that is diverse in its platforms, literally. I mean, across the board, we implement as a firm just about everything, which is really helpful when you're trying to be an unbiased advisor, which is the team that I lead. combined with noble purpose, which is the drive and dedication to do the right thing every time, as well as have a higher mission and goal. So you've got both a sink and a source, as well as a skill set, and those come together in an amazing way. And then you combine it with mindset of partnership. That's, to me, why IMCP is so important, as well as Voices for Innovation, BCPA, Women in Cloud. I mean, all these organizations are just phenomenal. WIT, Women Technology, as well. So important to have communities like that to be able to cultivate, all those great ingredients.
No, that's really cool. I love that. And I was wondering, you and I had talked a few weeks back, and you had shared a story with me about a moment when you wanted to do something philanthropic, paint a house, do something manual, and you got some feedback from your boss. And I
Yeah.
was wondering, we're all trying to find out sometimes what we can do or where we fit, and I thought that was an interesting take on how to give and give maybe in a different way, right? Or being mindful of the way you give. I was wondering, would
Yeah.
you mind kind of sharing that story?
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. And yeah, it's funny. I was like, what story did I tell him? But I learned long ago the truth is easier to remember. So yes, I remember this. Um, it was probably, let's see, 15 years ago or so. And this is nothing negative about the organization that I didn't work with, so I'm not going to mention their name. But there was an organization that was trying to recruit in a good way. It was mentorship type program. And they had a service project, which was, I think, literally painting. I couldn't remember what it was, honestly, what we were trying to paint. But it was a service project. It was a labor service project. It was all about giving back. And I asked for the few $1,000s or something like that to support it of our prior leader that I was reporting to at the time. And I explained, the value, the mission, vision. He said, "Love the org. It's not your unique ability." I'm like, unique ability. Okay, unpack that for me. So you're saying no? He's like, "I'm saying no." Yeah, I'm saying no. He said, "You're better off volunteering as a technology advisor for a nonprofit. Something you can do without even thinking about it that has immense value to someone else. Painting isn't that." I'm not actually a very good painter either, which is probably good. I get it on everything but the wall or whatever I'm supposed to paint. So my wife knows what color, whatever it is, I was painting when I come back in, because it's usually on my nose or my forehead or something. But it's true. And so you have to take a look at what is it you can do without thinking. It's something that comes natural to you that is overtly valuable to someone else, because that's something that can be expanded. It's something that takes very little effort, and it's something that you probably like because you're really good at it. And so it was a hard lesson, because I was really shocked, honestly, because the other folks that got into the program, they all went and became president of the country and stuff. But it was kind of like a big downer, but it was a lesson, and I have to admire the lesson. Because it forced me to think about, where am I putting my time? And what is the highest value and highest use of my time? And it wasn't an elitist thing. It was about, you could serve with the same amount of time, you could serve on 3 nonprofit boards. Think of the community that you're building by helping the beneficiaries of those nonprofits. So it's kind of the butterfly effect, and the flapping of the wings is further carried. So it was hard to hear that, but it's a lesson nonetheless.
And do you still kind of filter your decisions through that lens?
It's interesting. Yeah, and Frank Valdivia, so I can mention names in here, I hope.
Oh, yeah.
So he and I go back and forth quite a bit, and he quotes me and I quote him all the time. And he's been repeating something that I said a while back about doing your homework for more than one class at the same time. Like, if you've got 2 causes and they both need the same amount of effort, figure out a way to align them, so that when you do that, you're helping both orgs in a good way. If let's say you need some, I don't know, a lift in technology for security for nonprofits, and you write a blog, but it's going to affect and help many others, get it in a syndication of some sort that helps all those communities. Don't keep it down to one, spread the love. And so that your work can actually affect many rather than the one. And that's the common theme for everything that I've done, in my life. Is, even my Eagle Scout project was a Lyme disease awareness seminar. Most people help do repairs and projects and things like that. But this was to educate many to not contract Lyme disease. This is back in, I think, the 80s. I'm dating myself. But there was the purpose as to how can we help many more with the information of one. So it's just about amplification effect. And have I used it? Yeah, unconsciously, until you mentioned that. I haven't noticed, but yes, I have. Very astute of you to point that out.
No, that's cool. Just some of those lessons you learn, and to your point, you use them and you don't think about it. I think those are those kind of cool lessons, actually.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point.
Life changing. So, well, the only before I let the other guys in on this conversation, I wanted to ask you about
that was
something
just you and
that
me.
I know. These guys, they're just here for.
It might end up being that way.
They're just here for show. No, I'm just
We'll
kidding.
just do 4 separate shows. Oh.
Exactly. So I know that you are an enthusiast of the ocean. Can you tell us about your passion?
Yeah, you could say that.
That's a very vague description right there.
Well, I'm an ocean activist. No, I love policy that helps protect our waters. Absolutely. I mean, I started out environmental chemist for a reason, and I'm a water chemist specifically. So that's kind of where it started. But both my wife and I were kind of born in, on, and under the water, and anything to do with it. There's actually some really good books about why water helps calm and soothe you. And if you forget that, just anytime, picture you're driving on the highway and someone is next to you in a car. Would you, if something were to happen, either make a manual gesture with them, or would you wave at them to say hello? You probably wouldn't wave at someone on the highway and say hello, but you do when you're on a boat. Why is that? Because water calms you. It makes you a different person. The same person you might be road raging next to is the same person you'll wave at when you pass. We are definitely waterborne, I'd say. And my wife had a kayak before I did. So anything from scuba diving. I think it's really about trying to connect with nature in a way that is placid. I mean, if you've ever been scuba diving, you stop breathing and you just hover, how many things actually happen? And such a large portion of our planet is covered with water. It's both a method of transportation as well as a unexplored zone of our planet. So, it's just been a fascination since I was a wee little tot.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
What is your favorite water experience then?
Wow. Bourbon and water? No, I'm just kidding. No, that's not a good answer.
Hey, that's an answer.
That is an answer.
No. I think snow cones on a hot summer day. I think, question. I really do love scuba diving, truthfully, especially when it's just one person. If you free dive, it's like in Bonaire, you can just go down by yourself. Technically, you shouldn't, but with another buddy. Scuba diving is kind of one of those surreal experiences, especially a night dive. If you've ever done one, night dives, it just feels like another planet. Like you literally, if you've been over a reef at night and the bioluminescence start going off, it's like you're flying over a city coast and you don't even realize that world is there all the time. And then you go down and you pop a flashlight on near a brain coral, and then all this swirling happens. And probably the closest non-religious but waterborne moment that I've ever had, we were on a dive in Honduras. I'm trying to remember, Roatan, I think. And we did a night dive, and there's a dinoflagellate, I believe that's what it's was. It's called they call it string of pearls. Essentially, it's a vertically oriented organism that at night it strobes. And when you go down, you basically stand in sandy bottom. There's no coral. You're standing on anything. Dive master says, let the air out of your BCD. There's a couple of us down there. Pitch black. After we put our hand over our flashlight, it's pitch black. You should just stand there for 3 minutes. I'll let you know when we're done. He'll tap his tank. Everything turns to darkness. You start getting your night vision, and all of a sudden it just starts raining. Not raining, but raining these dots of light chasing each other all around as far as you can see. It is just the most surreal thing you can possibly imagine, to be surrounded by darkness, but then be surrounded by these little tiny points of light. It's just amazing. So an awe of nature that a lot of people don't see. You can't go on a bus. You have to take a boat a real far ways to get there. You have to be certified in lots of things, but it's an experience that it's a small portion. I just wish everybody could take advantage of that. It's not expensive overall, to experience these things, but it's can be mind changing. Especially as you're related to the environment, understanding kind of this chain of life that we have custody for.
Well, someday maybe we'll have to have bourbon and water together, and then we can share stories, because I had the opportunity many years ago now, but to dive off of Kona in Hawaii with night dive with manta rays.
Beautiful.
Very cool. Very
beautiful.
Very cool.
The underwater gliders. Yeah, that's absolutely. And it's just I'm just awe-inspired. I'm sure then you were as well, just watching them just gracefully.
And they're all around you, but they never touch you. You've got these fish that are, upwards of 10 to 12 feet in, wingspan, and they're just circling around you, doing their thing, feeding in the waters. It's an amazing experience. Really, really. Yeah.
Wow.
So sometime we'll have to do that. I don't know, Eddie, what else you got? You got other questions? Or Manish?
Oh no, it's all of us. Yeah. But I love that story. I think I will say this, like when you're underwater and you just stop for a minute, it's just you're kind of in your own space, right? It's hard to describe it if you haven't done it, but if you've done it, you know exactly what you're talking about. The sound is different. You're listening to, you can hear yourself. You're more aware of yourself, I think, in certain ways, and it's a very altering experience. I'll say that it's quite awesome, actually. I haven't done what you did with the luminescence and at night, but that sounds just fascinating. I'm thinking about how long will it take me to get the certifications I need to do that.
It doesn't take that long to get the certifications. I mean, weeks, not months or anything like that.
And you get kids started when they're 8 years old in bubble makers. Great program. Get them the taste. Get them taste early. Yeah, I know.
Right there, 8 years old.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I just got back swimming. Actually, that was what I was doing before I got on here.
Nice.
I did 4,000 meters in the pool. So.
Wow.
On my weekends I do 6. So.
Wow.
That's a daily thing for Eric. So
I had no idea.
Not quite daily, but close. As close as I can get, given schedule.
Do you have a lap pool in your home office, or is this like?
We have 4 pools in the community that I live in here. We actually have 4 junior Olympic sized pools, so I can usually find one that I can grab a lane in. So one of the upsides to living here.
Nice. Wow. Very cool. Good on you. You can only run or swim if chased. So that's good.
So Ryan,
you only get so many heartbeats. Why would I? No, I'm just kidding.
Speaking of kids, Ryan, great lesson there when your dad talked to you about joining Cub Scout and volunteering and everything. Any message you have for kids? Because I have an 8-year-old, and before pandemic, he was part of Cub Scout, and it has stopped, but hopefully it starts. Any guidance you have for kids to do more of volunteer? Because it doesn't come to their mind, right? Hey, let's do volunteer. So what message, because you have gone through this, maybe you have a better message for them to be involved on giving back to community?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think it's important and this is a custodian, right? Your parents, that they instill this empathy for others at an early age. I think, and I'm making patterns and generalizations, and I know everybody parents differently, but I think that our society is easy to get caught up in, consumer society. And the empathy that sometimes it takes to associate with what you have and what someone else may not have, and the differential between them. The earlier age it happens, and the more it's reaffirmed, is critical. And some folks want to adopt a puppy, but they don't go to a kill shelter. and realize that all these dogs and cats you're going to see tomorrow are not going to be here. That will make you not want to take a breed puppy. You're going to want a pound puppy, right? And so it's just about, I'm not going to call it forced empathy, but it's about exposure in a way that allows people to take their own conclusions. Now, it's hard in a young mind to predict. So I'm trying to think back. I was like, okay, Ryan, you're all astute now, but what were you thinking when you were a Cub Scout? I just want to trucks, right? Was I really that mindful? No, I surely wasn't. But I was not permitted to stray off course. We went to a graduated care facility and volunteered to make beds or feed folks and work in the kitchens or go to homeless shelters and things like that. So you start experiencing these things. You're like, well, as a kid, you're like, well, what's wrong with so and so? It's like, well, they lost their leg, from diabetes. Well, what's that mean? Well, it means their blood sugar was wrong and they lost circulation and then died. Their leg died, literally. I'm like, well, I remember that particular scenario. I'm like, oh, so how do you prevent it? He's like, eat well, like watch your sugar, because there's environmental diabetes and there's not. And he lost his leg because he didn't eat well. Too many Twinkies. And I'm like, I love Twinkies. How's that going to work? Moderation is the answer. It's not so it's those moments that are just like ephemeral people that really distill it. So I'm not saying expose them to these shocking truths, but sometimes it's important to show people, the food chain. you like hamburgers? Let's go visit a farm. To me, it's about kind of intentional lessons as much as possible. And, you can bring them to the water, but you can't necessarily force them to be empathetic. I learned that long ago. You can't force empathy on people. Either they get it or they don't. And I don't know if that helps, but that's a start.
No, I think that's good. You do have the word experience, and it happened to another podcast. Same thing. Like we had John, right? Eddie. He was talking about teaching kids or letting them experience, and that word relate. He was talking totally different subject. He was talking education, and that totally relates. Actually, that is the right answer. So thanks for that. Changing the gear towards IMCP and business. So I saw you first time in DC when Inspire was like 4, 5, 6 years back in DC, I think 2015, I guess. And I have always seen you up front at IMCP on the stage, with Microsoft on the stage, with even Tech for Social Impact. So how do you keep up? I think you're being intentional, but at the same time, what direction you have, or what suggestion you have once people know what to do? I mean, many times they're not clear, but once they're clear, okay, this is the area we want to focus. What are the tips you have for general public to get more and more involved with Microsoft and in that group?
Yeah, it's a great question. There was an interview that just did with CRN, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, specifically about saying how can a partner get involved in the nonprofit space, or is there room? Was one of the questions. Like, there's 1.5 million nonprofits just in the U.S. And I know, Eric, you've got tons of experience with this as well, and as well as others. And it's if you align things with things that are bigger than ourselves, all of us here, like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is what we typically snap to, which are 17 goals founded in 2015 of basically, if we can eradicate, which includes poverty and hunger, that we're going to be a much better society. We have until 2030 to do it, according to the United Nations goals. We are way behind, if you can imagine. And only in the last year, certain countries have slipped. I think I heard 50 years in the past. Just in the past year, they've made less progress, meaning they've fallen behind by an incredible amount related to gender equity or sustainability. Sorry. And so that's the first thing, is find out what your superpower is as an organization. If you're an individual, find out. I did a session in Inspire last year about finding your voice as an advocate, because I'm an advocacy chair, right, for America. So advocacy is not just technology policy. And I love Voices for Innovation and its phenomenal platform for helping change technology and how it affects others. And advocacy is for anything that you truly believe in. And being an ally, advocate, and activist in the right tone, in the right phrase, before it happens, not as a fair weather advocate after, is critical. And so the reason I say all this is it's about leaning in. At the end of the day, the things that we've been doing, I volunteered my personal time to go on the Hill and talk about things that matter to me personally, because that's what comes across altruistically. That's what comes across genuine. If you're contrived and saying, yeah, I believe in fill in blank, but you don't, people are going to see right away. They're going to know that you're not real. And so I always give people, the advice is look at the bevy of things that need work in the world. Find a personal story that connects to something that if you're scrolling through, you stop at. It's the link you click on. It's the thing you want to learn more about without compensation. It's the founder story. It's the generation of where you're going down that rabbit hole that consumes you, blog after blog or whatever that you keep learning about. That's something you probably should get involved in. And so my two nephews and a niece, and one of them has become basically extremely good at computers. He has his own GitHub repos now. He's making modifications to the things. You should have him on your podcast. He's great. But he's 17 years old, and he's got LinkedIn profile and all this stuff. I'm not saying I'd had any credit for that, but I might have had a little. And I have another cousin of mine who literally went into technology, and he told me at his wedding that the whole reason he is who he is today and working with an agency of 3 letters I can't speak to right now in technology is because I was a geek, and I was a happy geek, and I talked about the stories of what change you can make in the world. And so you never know who you're gonna influence, even when you're just being yourself as a leader. And that's the biggest thing I learned a while back. And getting involved in this is by doing something altruistically, intensively, and inclusively, you inspire others to do the same. You give them the hope, you give them the method and the means. There's plenty of room for everyone. I'm a theory of abundance guy. And so everybody knows that about me, hopefully, that I'm super darn partner friendly, because not any one company can save this planet and our society. It has to be everybody together. And so once you realize that you can't save the world by yourself, it's pretty humbling, and you got to just work through that and work with the people that are aligned the most effectively. And so the advice I give folks is find an industry that you're really good at. Doesn't have to be nonprofit, manufacturing, distribution, et cetera. Then find a nonprofit that is aligned with those industries. There's nonprofits aligned with banking and finance, nonprofits aligned with construction, real estate, nonprofits aligned with healthcare, and really dive into that area, because it's a natural fit for an organization that's already serving them to move into a tax strategy, which is 501c3, it's nonprofit. They're making net impact, not making net profit. The difference, right? They're mission focused. They give you noble purpose. They give you all the things that you want. And so the goal is to get engaged. And if you can't do all the work yourself, partner. Like, that's the whole point. And so I'm working right now with folks inside the IMCP and BCPA and all these other orgs. We're the backstop for others, and we also have on the ground partners that we might not have a geolocation with. And so it's just important to be aware, be altruistic, partner. If you don't have the competency, don't try to do it all yourself. Honestly, that's just a disservice to everybody. And just be humble and continue to serve the world.
Thank you.
It was a long answer. Sorry.
That's a great message.
Being of services is great, but I know for you, it's also giving you an opportunity to make some pretty cool connections and some introductions. And I'm curious, what's the coolest thing that you've gotten to do?
Wow. Coolest thing I've gotten to do.
Or the coolest person you got to meet.
I still want to meet my future self, but that's not going to happen. That's a great question. I think I'm inspired. This is going to be not a cop-out answer, but it's some of the leaders of the nonprofits that we work with globally are humbling to me. I mean, we're working you probably already heard this, but we're working in Nairobi with an organization, with a woman specifically who's the executive director, who has led this organization to serve 200,000 and educate 200,000 women entrepreneurs and youth, specifically with a focus on this combination of folks that are underserved and women that need connections to give them digital skills so that they can lift themselves with their own faculty. And that was what they've done. Now they want to do 500,000 in the next 3 years. And so we're helping, with this communication and conduits of learning and all these things. But there's so many unsung heroes out there that I'm humbled by people like that. I mean, there's so many circles of things that go on that you drive through Kenya and never even realize that's the headquarters of this organization, because they're only, less than 200 people or so as an organization. But it's just amazing to me to meet everyday heroes. And I think it's not a cop-out answer. I don't think it's truly, every day we meet folks that are changing the world, and they aren't looking for the limelight, at the end of the day. Sure, I've met obviously executives of big organizations as well as folks in political theaters and all that stuff, but it's the unsung heroes that are actually making the fabric of our society better. That to me is kind of what put fuel in my tank every day.
Very cool. Yeah. I don't know if you heard the episode of the podcast that we did with Karut, with Jody and Eves, but they have a nonprofit organization focused on helping women who are victims of sex trafficking. So pretty amazing. And like you were saying, not looking for the limelight, but they've got an amazing cause and a program, and we've had the opportunity, all of us, to engage with them and support that cause. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, you're not asking, but I'll share. My biggest flaw is I become emotionally attached to every single one of our tech missions, and I'm just one big ball of mush because I'm just like, oh my God, that's what you do. Oh gosh, all right, we're helping you. Like it's hard not to get moved.
Well, and it's educating too, right? I mean, I can imagine every one of these that you engage with. I've had the opportunity to do some of it myself with some of the nonprofits that we've worked with, and all of a sudden, it's a light bulb moment, right? Because all of a sudden you start to understand why they do what they do, and you realize where the need is, and you probably never thought about that before. Like I never thought about, using Karut as an example. I never really thought about, the statistics behind sex trafficking. Like they shared that something like, what Eddie remind me, is it 80 or 90%? It's 80 or 90%.
80 to 90%.
80, yeah.
Okay, 80 to 90% of girls who graduate is not really the term maybe you want to use, but who age out of foster care end up in trafficking. So the starting point for that whole thing is the foster care system.
Yeah.
And so it's stuff like that you just like, oh my God, I never would have thought about that in a million years. That's crazy. And that's just one example from one nonprofit. But it's like when you start to get into those kind of statistics, you learn from the organizations, whether it's a veterans care organization or like Karut, or there's just so many of them. And when you start to look at the statistics, and the challenges that they're trying to solve are staggering. And to your point, right, there's only so many, and only so many of us that are, even vaguely aware of what's going on.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I can't thank you enough for obviously working and engaging with them, because they need the help. They're typically mission focused. They're not typically technology focused. And this whole misnomer that if you're putting money towards your infrastructure, it's not money going towards your mission, has led to a whole lot of technology debt across the board for nonprofits. And they've been less and less effective because of it. That's not the way they should be. There's more computing power available today than any other time on our history of our galaxy, I'll even say.
What did you see? Yeah. No, what did you see? With COVID, where most of us are exiting a lot of the COVID restrictions across the U.S. now. But I'm curious what you saw as the impact of COVID on nonprofit organizations that you've worked with? Because exactly to your point, right? There's been this technology deficit, and now all of a sudden you've got landing, and now the way that they probably operated had to radically change.
Yeah, and it really comes down to preparedness and mindset. The orgs that were at least capitalized, that had some capital, funds to at least hang on to, and the ones that could fill out the paperwork for government subsistence with CARES Act and things, the ones that had listened to the technology roadmaps and gotten underway at least with some mobile tech and video connections at a minimum, the ones that had prepared in a way that was dynamic enough for a culture that didn't require presence, or that they had a mindset that was agile enough to accept change. Those are the ones that were much better off, especially the ones that also diversified their funding streams, long term. So, I'd say the majority, probably at least 70%, had the potential to make it through, not unscathed, but with lessons learned and a forced accelerated digital transformation, what we call. There's a portion of them that were barely holding it together before the pandemic. And I know of a few that have already, shut down, and it's sad. Honestly, the mission didn't go away. The purpose for them being didn't go away. The organization wasn't solvent. And it comes down to the management of their funds, the grants that they were receiving, their ability to raise funds in a different manner than they had been in the past. The big galas of the past didn't happen, but I went to an amazing gala virtually. It was phenomenal. It was so well produced. We had everything, and they had more cameos from like sports stars and everything else than they had ever in their own regular gala. And it was just like, okay, that was kind of cool. And so they raised more money than they ever had at a prior gala. So again, it was about mindset, ability to change, ability to pivot, and their mission didn't change. The needs didn't change, and some of them increased. You talk about foster care. Most of the volunteers for foster care were exactly squarely in the highest risk categories for COVID. Think about transporting foster children. It's typically done by volunteers of the age that's highest risk. That's a pattern, not a stereotype. But so they no longer had the ability to actually move them around. And so, believe it or not, this is kind of an interesting swirl, right? So we work with the Contingent, which you'll hear more about. But they were started at Every Child Oregon, which is a foster care organization in Oregon looking to change the foster care system. They found that tons of people want to volunteer, but they don't want to be foster parents, but they want to help. And so they were looking for ways to have them help, but not be foster parents. Enter COVID, obviously, issues. Then you need an organization that is able-bodied, can deliver food and move foster children safely. Team Rubicon. So you literally mash the two together. You have Team Rubicon helping a foster care organization. You couldn't make this up. So, but the key is all these organizations need to be able to be nimble and find new ways, to not put their volunteers at risk, at the same time and still deliver their mission and raise funds. So, summary of that is a lot of them made it through just fine, but unfortunately many didn't, and that's the travesty. Is that those that they served may now be going unserved. And to your point about trafficking and all these others, it's just a travesty that those people that need them the most, aren't getting the service that they need. So I see a lot of trends, in the tech space, obviously, but we're trying to reduce the needs of expensive systems, right? We're trying to create a process by which organizations can have the highest and best compute options that model their business, that make it unique, that give them exactly the tools at the right time at a reasonable cost. So that's why you all probably noted it, but we donated the entire volunteer management branch of the common data model for nonprofits in the cloud for nonprofit. So that was a Wipfli give, because honestly, it was part of our work with Team Rubicon, and it was able to help many, many others to do that. So we worked in tight concert with TSI to do that.
That's amazing.
Do you get involved in the grant side of things at all, or have you previously? I'm just curious, what do you see there? Because from what I've seen, that in and of itself is one of the single biggest challenges for a lot of nonprofits. It's, you kind of highlighted it a moment ago. The ones that were already positioned, who could get access to funds, they were going to do just fine. It's the ones that, don't have that experience, don't have that skill set in-house, that really were struggling, because the funds were there, right? I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, right? Of government funding that was out there. All you had to do was basically ask for it, if you will, in the right manner. But so many of them don't know how to do that. And I'm curious if you've seen, anything, or any tools or anything along those lines that help facilitate that, because that seems like that's one of the biggest challenges for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, no, we have. And to your point, not many organizations have the right ingredients necessarily, especially if the funding sources move around, right? During COVID, there's things spawned up and you had to apply quickly, and then they shut down again. It's kind of like whack-a-mole for grants. Like, oh, let's go to that one. Let's go to that one. So two answers. One, yes, we assist clients in helping build their what's called concept notes. What is it that they think they need to do the things they think they need to do? What is the materials list? Who's going to do the work? What are the outputs? What are the income? Folks that are involved. So we use human-centered design processes to build that out. We do it all virtually, and bring in stakeholders across the map. And the output is really prototypes as well as a concept note, so they can create the best possible grant application. The good donors say, "Oh, they've really done a lot of work. The risk is lower because they've done all this vetting. Oh, I see they've gotten." Name the large other organization's input. They seem to really have vetted this out. It seems like a great investment for this grant. They're building the story. We work in a lot of nonprofits that are like, look, we know there's a need here, but we don't know what the answer is. And that's honestly one of our specialties, is figuring out what it is. Let's put it all together in a way that we create a challenge statement. And I think you've all heard a lot of these processes, but using a challenge statement to rally around a human-centered design process to really get that emoted by a large number of individuals. So that is one thing we help with. The other piece, I'd say we have for our firm, I'll just speak really quickly about us. We created a COVID-19 response page, and it was, nonprofit experts in accounting and government tax, literally writing their fingers off for free, putting everything out there we possibly could the night that things were published. Still, to this day, the highest ranked page on our website in history. Because we were just flowing with information on how to get to this stuff. What do you do? What's a forgivable grant? Like all this stuff. Just so many questions. People they seek advice in times of uncertainty. The worst thing you could do is put a paywall in front of it. Like, there was an earthquake that happened in DC long ago. Side note, real quick story. And DC had a tiny earthquake, right? And the earthquake, and one of my coworkers was at a client site. A little earthquake happened, that bookshelves shook or whatever. This guy jumped over people, elbowed people, went all the way down the staircase, ran outside huffing and puffing. And then everyone else came out to the meet zone. They're like, hey Fred, what's going on? We had an earthquake. He's like, you stepped on everybody else to get out. Like, you remember that person. I don't know if he lasted there very long, but the point is, during COVID, you don't start putting paywalls up. You're going to remember who your friends were during the time of crisis. That was the story, by the way. Long way to get to that. But the key is, you want to be helpful there. And honestly, we saw just an amazing response because we were just trying to help. And the directive from our managing partner was lead with empathy. Like, this is not the time. So it's not the time to do anything but lead with them. So that's the second piece, is helping people with all of that, as you mentioned, paperwork. So it's about creating concept notes, helping donors understand what it is, what they want to do, and helping to do paperwork. But yes, we help with both of those things from every aspect, because honestly, they need the help. And it's totally fine. We don't have to get any credit for it.
Oh, that's awesome. So I want to take you on you said something a little while ago about you'd like to meet your future self. Right. So I want to let's explore that a little
Oh,
bit.
boy.
So you are in the Western Pacific Ocean on a dive, and you slip into the Mariana Trench, and you just keep going and going. You hit bottom. I don't know where bottom is because nobody's seen it yet, right? And in that, you end up meeting your future self 30 years from now. When you ask him, what have you accomplished from when I left to now? What do you want the response to be from yourself?
You're trying to make me cry, aren't you? No, most people know about me and my relationship with my dad, and like all these, like, do what you love because the rest will follow. I mean, the goal is really to make this place, this planet we're on, and this rock, and whatever other rocks we wind up landing on, better than how we found it. Period. Like, if it's not because of what we're doing personally, if you're a consumer, not a provider, if you're a taker, not a giver, I feel like if everyone has the right mindset like that, it's an amazing world. Challenge is, unfortunately, not everyone starts out with noble intentions. And so we wind up with a society that's not balanced. I would love it because of that year that you mentioned, that 15 years prior, because it's 30 years now, that because we rallied the technology companies on the planet and everyone's mindset changed after COVID, that we're able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals for the United Nations, which includes eradicating poverty, equity for all, sustainability for our planet, all of the things that are critical to us having, I'm not going to say just a utopia, but realistically, if those things are eradicated, we can actually have quite a society. And so I would love it if they said 15 years ago, that's what happened. The challenge is it's not right now. We're not on path. Could it not happen? 9 years is a long time. But it's going to take everybody. And I'm just going to track back to the UN SDGs for a second, because most people don't realize nonprofits aren't the ones supposed to be working on the UN SDGs. The United Nations 17 core sustainable development goals are everyone's responsibility. For-profit companies, not-for-profit companies, citizens, children, grandparents. Everyone's responsible for it. No one gets off. There's no buy card. Oh, I'm name your whatever. I served in the military. Fantastic. Now you can serve the country. And obviously there's lots of opportunities for that. Respect that very greatly. But everybody's on the hook, per se. So as soon as people realize that you are a for-profit company or a manufacturer, and you want to just dump the waste in the river behind you because it's cheaper, you just violated some of the sustainable development goals. Just because you made more money doesn't mean you won. So to me, it's just super important that we all align on that everyone's responsible, for profit, not for profit, and no one can save the planet on their own. So we need everyone to get involved. And so it's critical. And by the way, I'm going to do a shameless plug. There's going to be a hackathon coming in, I think it's August or September, specifically around the UN SDGs that they're doing inside of Microsoft. It's not public yet, but should be by the time this airs. So hopefully I didn't violate anything.
That's always great. We've got our first scoop.
So sorry, you said UNSDG, and I'll be honest, I don't know what is that. Tell me.
Totally cool. So I'm going to pull it up here, but actually, I have a wallpaper that I put behind myself for this. So United Nations is familiar with them. They in 2015 put together. Here we go. They put the 17 most important causes in a matrix. Now, there are too many of them. That's what the biggest criticism. And there's also about 160 some sub-bullets under all these. But really, it's about the biggest things that are needing help in our society, whether it be for the earth, for equity, for economic access, for sustainability, for hunger, et cetera, for education. And so each of these has a series of goals behind it, APIs that were professed. And so the goal is by 2030, we have these eradicated, meaning we've checked the box. We now have, equity across all genders. We all have access to economic markers. All these things are specific in that. And so the goal is to actually map pretty much everything you do to these, because it gives you that noble purpose, noble mission.
Yeah.
Whether it's a company, that's not a not-for-profit, or another. I mean, I can give lots of examples, but the key is making sure that you're mapping to these. And so what we hear from a lot of nonprofits is, I've never heard of those. Great. That means we should be talking about it. It's one of those things that, and by the way, I fault no one, because it's not, the United Nations' marketing department hasn't really gotten, on the click through web traffic UN SDGs. But I can say this, I got to give them credit. This is not a plug for Samsung, but there is an entire United Nations Sustainable Development Goals app. Here we go. Is this it? Maybe not. It's a wallpaper that teaches you about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals when your phone is not on regular screen. It's amazing. I'm like, holy crap, that's really cool. I'll see if I can find it here. But it's an education process for the most part. Later.
Awesome. That's perfect. Thank you.
Oh, there you go. Samsung Global Goals. You won't see that until I drop my
Yeah,
wallet.
this Teams may give problem.
Yeah, it's okay. And I know it's an audio webcast. So for those of you listening at home, it's called Samsung Global Goals. And yeah, I was pretty impressed. It was a shock to find UN SDGs embedded in a mobile phone screensaver. But somebody got the message.
Awesome. Yeah.
So when you think about the SDGs, if you were to prioritize your top two, what do you tend to focus on?
Honestly, it's skilling right now. It's access to knowledge, which is the initiative specifically around creating equity by giving access to information and going through the skilling initiatives that we're doing globally. I mean, this is part of the stuff we're doing in Kenya as well as Latin America, is providing the access to education for everyone. You never know who the next fill in the blank, Elon Musk or whoever is going to be, but they just don't have internet access right now. They don't have access to technology training. It's creating equity by giving access and making sure that everyone can be equally enabled with the potential. And so that's huge to me. I mean, if you take or prevent someone from learning, that's silencing them for life. I mean, think about what that would do. It's suppressing somebody. It's a tolerance of suppression versus the giving of knowledge. And so to me, that's absolutely critical. And something we're super passionate about. It's our work with, everything from the Skillful Initiative, the Markle Foundation, or some of the skilling initiatives that we went. Oh, my camera's off. Skilling initiatives we're working with inside of, Latin American countries to educate 10 million folks that are differently abled, can't even make it to an internet cafe on a good day in COVID, without COVID. How do you reach these folks and make it fully accessible? These are the challenges of our society, right? And so it's important to be the good, as I've said, that you want to see in the world. And we don't like easy problems at the end of the day. And that's probably the single biggest thing you'll get out of it is it takes a lot of work to do these. And you need to be, you probably mentioned it before, Manish, but intentional. This is the long answer for how do people get involved. It's lean in, find something you're passionate about, lean in, leverage a superpower, all of those things.
So I'm curious because obviously we talked about you being a servant and having a servant mind, and you work with a lot of people, both for business and just for the better good. But all of those are different types of, in their own way, different types of partnering stories. And I was wondering of all the stories that you have over the time you've been in technology, can you pull out like your favorite partnership story or partnering story? It doesn't have to be related to business. It could be anything. I'm just curious about what that is.
That's a great question. I think there are a lot. I'm just trying to think of the ones that have the highest and best kind of storylines. I think this is not a cop-out answer, but everything we do is a partnership. I mean, nobody goes it alone, regardless. And obviously, it made it to the front page. What we did with Team Rubicon, and it was a true partnership between us and Microsoft, specifically Tech for Social Impact and the team there. But also, there were other technology partners in the mix. Right now we're working with other nonprofit-focused technology companies to deliver kind of an entire ecosystem to these organizations. And so, to me, the best story comes from intentional horizontal integration. Don't make the buyer figure out if the things work together. It shouldn't be their problem. I think there was a Plays for Sure icon back on the Zune. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. You guys are way too young for this, but it's basically a compatibility sticker that says, hey, if you're going to play a music file, it will play on this device. Plays for Sure. We should have that on like everything for a standard that shows that us as partners have leaned in to work out the horizontal integration. That when you drop this little Power BI report on top of this schema, that it's not going to blow everything else up. Like, it shouldn't be their problem. We don't really have that right now. There's no compatibility requirements. There's no standards that show that, hey, all of our solutions work with everybody else, or these are the 3 partners we work with. So if you're using any of these 3 together, we're all going to work together. And that should be everybody, honestly. The biggest challenge we have is because it's a free market and everyone can do what they want, but it creates a fantastically complicated buyer journey, especially for nonprofits. Going, okay, so I can do that, but there's a variation of it here that's just a little bit less, but it doesn't have that. So how do I decide between those 2? But it's really the same thing. And add that times 10 or 20 or 100. And you create decision paralysis. And then the people who are doing well just get frustrated and say, you know what, just hand them a clipboard. And then you're back to phase 1. And I've had that happen where somebody says, oh, what do we got to do to get that new data point into the form? Well, there's a bunch of pens over there and there's a bunch of paper over there. Can we just go house to house? We got to get this. And they just give up because they're not technologists in the field usually. And so they don't know that it's just a couple clicks and they can push a new release and they refresh and they're done. Just don't understand it. So, a lot of the partnerships happen both serendipitously of, oh, I didn't know you were in here working on this. This is cool. Let's do something together. It happens just like when you go to a harbor and you anchor out and you realize that 3 of your friends are there. Nobody called each other. You just wound up there, and that's okay. You make the best of it. That's what voting is all about. Sometimes that's the way it works with clients. I find out that, oh, I didn't know you were in here working on this. This is great. Let's work together. So sometimes the best partnerships are the ones that are serendipitous and wind up being something, I always say 1 + 1 + 1 can equal 10 if you do them partnering right. It doesn't have to just equal 3.
No, that's great. Yeah, so we're gonna go back to boating because you said something and it made me think about something. And this is more, personal, right? So
yeah.
You're out boating, with your wife, and you're gonna anchor for the evening, right?
Mm.
And then you go to sleep. Your boat, for some reason, the chain of the rope snaps, and the boat it's on its own, and you're asleep. Both of you are asleep. Where do you want to wake up? Above? It could be above or below sea level, but where would you want to wake up?
So you were with us when this happened, evidently.
No, but I put a tracking device on your boat. That's why I know. I'm the one who cut the cord to the anchor to see what would happen in the first place. Just kidding.
No, it actually did happen to us. It was a mooring ball that snapped. It was one we trusted and it didn't hold, and it was a blow. They say if you're not breaking things, you're not boating. So that's the first thing. So it's natural that something's going to not work. What you don't want to do is wind up on something where your props get completely mangled because they're not inexpensive. So wherever it's going to be either sand or silt, so we can safely beach ourselves. I think from my perspective, and this is going to sound so cheesy, but my wife and I are quite a tag team, and I'm just bragging for her. She'd figure a way out of whatever it is we're doing just by conviction. And everybody knows that she's kind of the wind under our sails. But I think that the key is that whatever you do is you work through together. And so I hate to say it, but wouldn't really matter as long as we're together and everybody's safe and healthy. It'd be great to have internet access. Maybe I could say that somewhere at least has a 56K connection, which is Satcom, Iridium. But seriously, I feel like life is just one big set of challenges that keeps coming your way, and it's not what situation you're in, but how you accept the challenge that makes you who you are. So I literally say, spin the globe, put me anywhere, as long as my wife is healthy and safe, and I'm there. And okay, maybe we have a tiny little satellite connection. I think I'm fine with anything.
Yeah, the opportunity to start a new nonprofit somewhere that
There you
doesn't
go.
exist already.
There you go. Props are us. Yeah, that's funny.
So
it's a good question. Yeah, that's the best. I do like challenges. I literally am a problem solver professionally.
and you have an ideal partnership with your wife. Obviously, you're a huge fan, and we can tell that, right? Which is awesome. So describe what an ideal partnership with another organization would look like, or just in general, what that looks like for you and for Wipfli.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'd say mutual attraction for one. I'm speaking about not my wife right now, believe it or not, but it has to be good for both organizations. I think it comes down to mutual respect. I don't think somebody should be a prime and a sub in like some sort of subservient versus master relationship. And I did presentations with pairs, partner to partner maturity model many years at Inspire, and we talked about the hierarchy of a relationship. And first it's like, okay, we should work together, the know like trust model. And then, okay, the pinnacle is like, we're going to market together. We're doing joint marketing. You have access to my list. I have access to yours. Our implementation teams are intertwined. We benefit both from the relationship, like all the things you would want, that each of us have access to provide the solutions that we're really good at. And the other one always picks up the other. It's the classic yin and yang. To me, that hierarchy is fantastic. And, we've had it with organizations that we start talking about joint marketing or, things that are really intertwined to the point where you could tell me, hey, so one of your PMs said something on a call the other day. I wanted you to know about it just because it didn't land so great with the client. I want to hear that from another partner, just like I would tell someone else there's spinach in their teeth. And that's the whole goal. You want to just be intentionally observant for the other's benefit. So, I mean, you always assume positive intent, but it should never be adversarial. A good relationship is where you're excited to see people. You want to have, that after hours connection. It's like you can dream together. You don't hold back. You don't hold, oh, well, that's our IP we're working on. You know what? First to finish, right? First mover advantage. Like, let's figure this out together. And no one is successful alone. They always had at least one person that believed in them. Why not be a partner with them in the process? So, I think that level of camaraderie and combined with impact can be seen by a client that you're working on together. First question is, have you all ever worked together before from a client? If it's the first deal, you're like, actually, no. But we really like them a lot, and we've admired them for many years. We'd hope they give us the time of day once, and here we are. But it's important to just be completely honest.
Honest, yeah.
I've said that before, by the way.
Well, that's great. I mean, somebody's got to be the first, right? So, but yeah. And then, if our listeners are interested in learning more about you or what you're doing, or they want to lean in on one of the SDG goals,
Mm-hmm.
or really want to get to know more about TSI or just anything, where through this conversation they found something that lit a fire under them, how would they get in contact with you?
That's a great question. Yeah, my LinkedIn is definitely the best for me. I have ongoing LinkedIn conversation. So I'm sure you can put it in the show notes or whatever, but it's I think it's just Ryan Risley, something /Ryan Risley. But yeah, no, I welcome it. I mean, you'd be surprised. I do get post presentation feedback through LinkedIn, connections, and I love helping folks. Even again, it goes back to that. What's your unique ability? If I can help somebody with 10 minutes to just get them a direction or get them started, that's what we do. And so that's somebody gave me a chance at some point. So I remember who it was. You basically get your next position from somebody not from some blind resume. And so I always help people get their first job, then a better job, then a career, in that order. And getting that better job is all about networking. And the first job is hard. You got to get somebody to trust you and take a chance. But building a career, that's when you start with your mission, your vision, noble purpose, all that. It's something you wake up in the Monday morning excited rather than dreading. So
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. So kind of winding down here, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you very much, not for just being on the podcast today, but as part of the IAMCP community for a long time now. You've done a lot for this group. You've been a great connector, and you are part of the heart of this community, and we're all grateful for you and for everything you do, and I'm truly happy that you keep us grounded and connected to things that actually matter. So just wanted to express our gratitude on behalf of the entire community, and also thank you for sharing your time with us today. I really appreciate it. So with that, that'll do it for this episode of True Stories in Tech Podcast. I'm Eddie Bader with Aegis Innovators, along with my friends Manish Bhartia, president of Think AI Consulting, Eric Klaus, CEO of PartnerSource, and our very quiet Brian Enuma today, as president of Strategic Systems Group. And our special guest today has been Ryan Risley, who's the principal and a chief technology officer of the Business Solutions Group from Wipfli. So with that in mind, thank you all for listening, and please join us again for our next True Stories in Tech. Thanks.